Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Challenger Network News. I'm John Stefani, Principal at Elixirr, and today with us we have Lana Calton, who is the Senior Managing Director and Head of Clearing for Hilltop Securities. Hi, Lana. Lana, you're on mute, so we cannot hear you.
There we go. Hi there. Good morning.
There we go. Hi, Lana. Great to have you on the show. Thank you very much for taking taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us. The topic today is all about what's coming up in terms of T+1 and the journey to clearing and settlement cycles. And Lana, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit, tell us about your expertise, and then we'll jump in on the hot topic at hand.
Sure, thank you. So again, my name is Lana Calton. I'm the head of clearing at Hilltop Securities. So I oversee all of our broker-dealer and RIA relationships that are introduced, fully disclosed to the firm. I've been with the firm for 27 years, and in that time I've had various roles between trading and operations, product development. I've been in the clearing side since '97, though, and really enjoy this side of the business. It's never a dull moment, and certainly this journey is going to be no exception to that.
Great, thanks for the intro, much appreciated. So as mentioned, we're going to be talking today about clearing and settlement cycles in the financial services world. Over the course of history, we've gone from, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Lana, about 15 or 14 days to clear something down to a T+2 environment for the equities space. And there's a lot of conversation around bringing it to T+1 or even faster. So I guess the idea then becomes, why go down this path of T+1 or faster? What's the reason for this?
So I think that there's been a lot of conversation over the last couple of years, 18 months certainly. I would say the first thing that probably brought this to light was some of the volatility we saw in the markets last March. When the deposits that were required at the clearinghouses during some of the mortgage volatility, those spiked significantly, which is probably a little more of a niche part of the market. But then fast forward to what we saw in earlier this year with some of the meme stocks, as they call them, the deposit requirements there. Some of that bubbled this conversation up. But quite frankly, this has been a conversation that's been going on, within industry groups and through with the regulators and what have you for a while. But you're right. The settlement cycle really over the past couple hundred years, when you look back on it, it's transitioned from around 14 days or so to our last shortening was in 2017 down to T+2. So we've actually made more progress in the last 25 years than we've made in the last 200 combined. But it's a very integrated network, and there's a lot of complication that goes on behind that. So it really requires a coordinated effort throughout the industry. But I think that when we start seeing an increase in volume, more participation in the markets than ever before, and you're certainly going to see spikes in those deposits, which that everybody just has a finite amount of capital, and it has to be committed to secure the trades that you're introducing to those central clearinghouses. That's certainly one compelling reason. I think the other reason, though, is the fact that by shortening the settlement cycle, you reduce settlement risk to end investors and create a safer, more liquid market.
Right. No, couldn't agree more. So when you think about other products that perform this same function, it's not just for equities, right? There's clearing and settling for fixed income products and foreign currency and things of that nature. So, and some of them are a little bit ahead of the curve in the equity space as relates to how fast they can move with respect to clearing and settling. What do you think is the real reason equities has kind of lagged against some of these others in terms of getting to this speed, if you will?
Well, if you're referencing something like, say, options, for instance, which do clear and settle T+1 and always have. Well, the difference there is when you're clearing and settling an option, what you're really doing is you're just transferring the rights under that contract from seller to buyer. So there's really not an exchange of asset. So other securities, whether it be equities, fixed income, that involves a transfer agent and a true transfer of asset between parties. So it's a little different animal. So that's the primary reason that you see things like futures contracts and options and things like that clear on a different cycle. But you're right. There are other securities, not just equities, that play here. But all of that does go through a central clearing party of one form or another, whether it be NSCC is the central clearing house for equities, munis, corporates, UITs, those type products, and then also under DTCC purview is the Fixed Income Clearing Corp. And then there's a couple different branches there, one for mortgage backs and one for like Fed items. So, there's everybody has an exit ramp, if you will, off the freeway, but all of those other products, for the most part, Treasury settle T1, but almost everything else is T2.
Right. So when you think about trying to get to T+1 or even T plus shorter, T plus half a day, or even real time, similar to something what the folks at Paxos and Robinhood were talking about not too long ago. Do you need a small group of parties to kind of kick this off, or could you actually do it in a big bang approach where everybody just runs at 100 miles an hour to do it all at the same time?
I think it's a great question. And I think that the pilot that they're undertaking right now, it's a 2-year pilot under an SEC no action letter. I think it's a really compelling thing to watch. But as far as the industry in general, just thinking about the challenges of trying to either bifurcate at a product level or some subset of the industry, how the flow works, I think you've got a challenge because, as we all know, there's somebody on the other side of every trade. And what the process today, until we have something that either mimics the netting process that happens through NSCC, you could put people in a situation where you've got buyer facing seller. Right now, let me kind of back up and explain how that works. Today, let's say, for instance, Hilltop Securities, we have a DTC participant number, and everything that we introduce to any of those clearinghouses I mentioned earlier, we pass that as our participant ID on their behalf. And so at that point, we have a capital commitment to meet the collateral requirement based on the volatility of any of those securities, which is kind of what you saw in the whole, GameStop, AMC, that type of situation. There was a lot of volatility there, spiked those deposits. So what happens, though, when you send that trade to the clearinghouse has what's called a clearing counterparty guarantee that all members enjoy that benefit, which basically means that the clearinghouse becomes responsible for settlement. So that means that you've got them, they're facing the seller, they're facing the buyer, and us as Hilltop Securities have assurance that the other side of that trade is going to settle and that our client will be made whole on the obligation that we presented. Until there's some sort of mechanism in place to replicate that, I think you're going to see some, decreased liquidity in the market. I think that it introduces a lot of uncertainty that's not there today. So I think that that's an element that needs to be, reviewed, certainly. But with that said, I think that what Paxos is trying to do, I think it's transformational. I really do. There's a lot, though, that under that no action letter, it really hasn't been talked about a whole lot. The clearance and settlement piece that they've accomplished, the day that the news broke when they were, they did the settlement outside of DTCC. That's interesting stuff for sure. I mean, it's groundbreaking. but under that no action letter, there's a lot of stuff that happens after the trade, dividends being paid, margin being calculated, things like that, that they're operating under an exemption there because, that part's not quite figured out yet. When you look across the market, it's not really an option to not be able to, pay clients dividends and calculate margin and live under Reg T and Reg Show and all of the
I wouldn't be happy if I didn't
processes
get
that
paid.
are in place today. So yeah, well, yeah, right. I mean, that's part of the deal. So, I think that my thought is that, when we've done these type of transitions in the past, we've all come together as an industry, and we've worked together to, to solve this. The last time in 2017 that we did this, I believe it was SIFMA that commissioned a playbook for the industry, and all participants participated in many weekends worth of stress testing and different things. I mean, there's just way too much at stake to not, ring that bell on Monday morning and everything go just the same way it did on Friday afternoon.
Right, absolutely. So when you think about all the things you just mentioned, obviously banks these days are more technology companies than they are actual banks with physical products that you deal with, right? And when you think about the type of technology that's going to be required in order to kind of fulfill this T1 agenda, recognizing that smart contracts and distributed ledger technology and things of that nature are there and are being utilized for things that would create speed. What's your opinion with respect to the type of technology that should be leveraged to actually make T+1 a reality?
I think when you study how distributed ledger technology works and what it is able to replicate, I think that we all better get very familiar with what that is. I definitely think that has a place in the future. How far out, it's hard to say. I think that a chain is as strong as its weakest link, right? I mean, I think it's going to be one of those things we all have to, at some level, get there together. So I think it's fascinating. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the industry has, there's been a lot of fee compression, which is great for, end clients and investors. But that means that we're all challenged with being more efficient, using all of our resources, whether it be human capital, net capital, et cetera, at our disposal, and making it as efficient as possible. If we're not keeping our eye on the ball with the technology that's going to help us get there, not only within our individual firms, but as an industry, I think it's going to be a disservice to the investor ultimately.
Couldn't agree more, quite frankly. So when you think about all this hype of going faster, if you will, where do you think the pressure is coming from to do that? Is it customers? Is it the financial institutions themselves? Is it the clearing organizations? Where's the pressure coming from for more speed?
Well, I think there's been more rhetoric and discussion around this than I've certainly ever seen in my career, which I think is great. I think every point in time where you get to a place where you're being pushed forward, there's some impetus for that, some catalyst, right? And I think that we live in an instant gratification society, right? No matter where we turn. So I think there's some of that. But as far as what's really driving the speed, I think we've got a wide span of clients that we're trying to serve in this industry. You've got on one end of that spectrum, you've certainly got a set of investors that there's an incredible amount of wealth that is represented by that group, and there's a huge intergenerational transfer of wealth that's taking place, and we all have talked about quite a bit. So you've got this group that is maybe a little less comfortable with technology. They're a little more comfortable with a high touch human relationship. There's a subset of the industry and that we're all trying to solve for that. So there's kind of that layer that we can't quite sunset yet because we're a service business, right? Then you've got the other end of that spectrum where you've got people that want mobile tools, instant payment, all that kind of technology, crypto, et cetera, et cetera. That's table stakes for them, and everything really in between. So it is a bit of a challenge, I think, for the industry to try to serve all of that. So I think there's an element of that that's driving the speed. Of course, in any business, you always, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And so the new people coming into the marketplace, you want to make sure that you're in a good position to serve that client. So I think that's part of it. But I also think, like I said, the fact that we just live in a society that, patience is kind of a lost art. I think that's a big piece of it too.
Your instant gratification is always seems to be the pace these days, without question. So when you think about what the impact of all this change is going to mean, particularly for like an organization like yours, and specifically for you and what you do for a living in that organization, do you think it is actually going to hurt some industries where you're currently making money off of these short-term lending, things of that nature, what you're doing with margin and collateral and how you can actually capitalize that and generate money off of that? By going to T+1, what's your opinion of what it's going to do to potentially harm other business units as part of what we're considering a normal life cycle today for T+2?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, when you look at what the estimates for a transition from T2 to T1, the estimate on a reduced VAR, which is the variance component of a collateral deposit that member firms have to post at the central clearinghouses every day. The estimate is that this transition could reduce those payments by around 41%. That's not counting, some of the other components of those collateral deposits, such as if you have an inordinate amount of buys versus sells in a day, if you have a concentration, as at the firm of the volume in any given day, that can boost your deposit. So, clearly somebody is so you've got either an opportunity cost because it's the firm committing their capital, within that settlement period to support those trades, or they're doing some sort of overnight lending or some sort of financing. So certainly, somebody the people lending that money, that could be a significant impact to those groups. I think you're also going to see that as we transition to a shorter cycle, there's going to be certain processes that are going to have to shift, even at T1, and things like really the institutional side of the business. We've been talking a lot about, I think, kind of in the tone of retail clients, the institutional side of the business, which arguably, those are some, it's a huge number of trades that we send through our pipes every day here at Hilltop, and some very sizable trades across the entire street. A lot of the bifurcation between the trade confirmation process and the trade affirmation process, I think that's going to have to be dealt with, once and for all. I think that's going to drive some institutional DBP type clients to have some different behavior on affirming those trades, and when that happens. So there'll be some, possibly some hedging and like repo type stuff that has to be adjusted. Somebody is making money on that side of the fence. And then you've also got things like physical securities and things that are, custodied with banks and trust departments that we're probably going to have to look at some sort of tokenization of those securities, and that would probably bring them into a central clearinghouse scenario. So yeah, there's definitely going to be, some transition here, and probably some people that are going to have to recalibrate, their business model.
Right. So if you think about then, because obviously you're a rock star in this industry, so I'd be really interested to understand what you and Hilltop are doing to kind of prepare for what it is that is eventually going to be a reality.
Yeah. So, John, thank you for. I'm not a rock star at really anything, but I sure appreciate that nod. That makes me feel good. I think that, as far as what we're doing, I've worked very closely with several industry groups, whether it be through the FINRA Clearing Firm Committee, the SIFMA Clearing Firm Forum. And then I sit on the board of the Bond Dealers of America and the American Securities Association. We work very closely with those groups, and they all serve different roles for us. But within our own shop, we certainly, this has had us taking a look at, where are any sticking points through our operational areas, that we need to make sure we're buttoning up to prepare. In an odd way, maybe it's if there's any silver lining to what 2020 and 2021 has been so far, which has certainly been a challenge for everybody. I think it actually drove quite a bit of electronic delivery, clients signing up for ACH, things like that are going to be necessary all the way through a process. The more this compresses, it's going to involve in client behavior in a way that it really never has before. So, we're all going to have to start pushing on those type things. And then we're also participating in industry groups, to solve these things kind of at the back office level. A lot of what we've talked about is really esoteric stuff, that happens day in and day out. I mean, John, you and I've talked about this. I mean, this is what we know and love. I mean, we love this side of the business. Did we ever think that, the topic of clearing and clearinghouse collateral deposits would ever be trending on Twitter? I didn't think I would ever see that in my lifetime, but.
That's terrific. Well, Lana, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. And we look forward to seeing everybody else who's joined this into our